I arrived just before dusk, when the marigolds began to glow and the city hums with a kind of ancient welcome. The air smelt like copal smoke and roasted cacao. Oaxaca was always this beautiful, especially now, 2 days before Dia de los Muertos, but it had never felt quite this distant. I hadn't even unpacked when I saw Carmen's stall. She was leaning over a loom, hair in a loose braid down her back, laughing at something an older woman said. I froze at the corner, as if the tiled sidewalk might reject me. She hadn't seen me in 5 years. A shout of Licenciada Lucia broke the spell, an old neighbor waving from a flower stand. Carmen looked up, recognition flaring and then flickering out. I nodded. She turned back to her thread. My Aunt Rosa raised me on coffee and courage, a land-use warrior before women were invited to the table, let alone the courtroom. When she died 6 months ago, I thought the property she left me was safe, but now, with the city eyeing her land as prime real estate for tourism development, the old archive maps were inconclusive. They always are when money's hungry. Carmen and I hadn't spoken since I left for Mexico City. She'd stayed, opened her workshop, taught apprentices, became someone. I hadn't expected her to be the one they assigned to meet me at the co-op. I especially hadn't expected her to bring the hoipil. She held it like it was alive. This was misfiled. Accession number says it came from the Dacolula line, but Rosa never used this edging. I took it carefully, my fingers brushing hers. The cotton was worn soft, the base a deep magenta almost turned wine-colored by time. My aunt's signature huitl stitch curved just beneath the collar. I used to watch her hands move like music across thread. I knew that stitch. I whispered. You're sure? I pointed to the inner seam where a single green thread looped once, then twice. Her quiet flourish. We waited. Then Carmen said, "You'll have to pose as a buyer. No one wants a lawyer in here." So I played the interested collector, asked questions about weaving styles, took pictures I said were for a cultural blog. My voice felt fake in my mouth. The co-op volunteer gave me a price tag. I flipped it over. On the back, Accession 231K, donated by Estrada family, 2003. My aunt didn't have family by that name. Carmen walked me out. Estrada was Lupita's cousin, one of the girls from Rosa's first workshop. I was already cataloging how this could help. Misattribution, faulty records, chain of custody. Do you think Lupita knew what she was giving up? I asked. Carmen shook her head. I think she didn't know it mattered. The light caught the glass beads in her earring, a hummingbird, small and defiant. I almost said her name then, just her name, Carmen. But the church bells rang and the spell broke again. The hearing was in 4 days, the morning after the last procession. The city would sleep off its grief and make a ruling that could erase my aunt's legacy. I had 4 days to prove a dead woman still owned what she built, and that I hadn't come back just to take. The next morning, the market felt different. Children darted through the aisles with painted skulls on their cheeks, paper marigolds in their hair. But something was off. The way people looked at Carmen, then looked away. At her stall, someone had scrawled Traidora across the back tarp in chalky white paint. Just above her hanging blouses, between 2 papel picado banners. I didn't ask. She didn't explain. Instead, she handed me the huipil. Look again. Inside the hem. I turned it over, tracing along the lower edge. It was a double-folded seam, well hidden. My thumb caught a bump, something stiff between stitches. I took out my keys and teased at the thread until a bit of embroidery floss gave way. Inside, 3 embroidered letters and a date. RMG 98. Rosa Marila Garcia, my aunt, 1998. I looked up. Carmen was already watching me. She stitched her initials into some pieces, she said quietly. Only the one she gave, not the one she sold. So this was a gift. Carmen nodded. And if it was a gift, she couldn't have sold the land. It wasn't hard proof, but it cracked the story open. Back at my aunt's house, still dusty with disuse, I went through the sewing box under her altar, a place she used to keep extra bobbins and incense. That's when I found the letter. Typed on old paper, signed with her name, dated early 1999. The phrasing was formal. I confirmed the transfer, as requested, in return for payment by the group. My stomach dropped. Carmen read over my shoulder. She did sell it? No, wait. I flipped the page. It wasn't addressed to any official, just to the collective. No landmarkers, no maps. I pulled the thread tighter in my mind. She's not talking about the property. She's talking about a bulk fabric order. Transfer, as in delivery. You sure? I pointed to the bottom. Look, her sign-off. May the thread hold. She wrote that on every order slip. A red herring. I almost let it break me. Later, we sat on her rooftop. The city buzzed below, fireworks popping somewhere in the hills. I didn't ask you to come back, she said, sipping a tole from a chipped blue mug. I didn't come for you. She smiled, but there was no joy in it. You left right after Rosa closed the workshop. People remember. I left because the city offered me a scholarship. You left without saying goodbye. I opened my mouth, closed it. The air was heavy with cornmeal and something unspoken. I didn't think you wanted me to stay. Carmen stood up, brushed imaginary dust off her skirt. We always want the ones who leave to stay. That's the problem. The next day, a flyer changed everything. I spotted it on a community board by the plaza. Honor the elders of the thread. Parade float schedule. Listed among the writers, Doña Tomasa, Master Weaver, Taclola line. Tomasa, I said aloud. She's still alive? Carmen asked, peering over my shoulder. She was my aunt's oldest student, maybe the only one who knows what really happened. We found her workshop half an hour later, tucked behind a bakery, walls lined with dyed wool and half-finished rebosos. Tomasa didn't even look up. We're not buying. I'm Rosa's niece, Lucia Garcia. Now she looked. Old eyes, sharp as cactus needles. And what do you want, abogada? To prove she never sold that land. Tomasa spat on the ground. Land does not belong to people. People belong to land. Your aunt knew that. You? You wear the city on your skin now. I'm trying to fix what was stolen. You want to fix it? She barked a laugh. Then come to the parade. She turned away, leaving only the scent of mothballs and cinnamon. Outside, Carmen grabbed my arm. She's riding the float. She knows something. She's also not talking. Then we'll ride with her. I blinked. What? Every artist in writing carries a banner. If we're not invited, we make our own, stitch the truth into it, force them to see us. And you think they'll let two disgraced lesbians parade through town with a protest banner? Carmen's smile returned, this time with teeth. I think if we do it well enough, they won't stop us. Time was slipping. Less than 48 hours to the hearing. And the only plan I had involved parading through the city like a plea in motion. We started sewing that night. Carmen pulled out a bolt of muslin from her storeroom, too coarse for clothing, perfect for protest. She sketched a pattern in charcoal, a jagged line through a hillside, names stitched along it like trail markers. Mine, hers, my aunt's, even Tomasa's, though we hadn't yet earned it. I'll do the stitching, she said, already threading her needle. You make it legal. I drafted captions for the bottom, phrases from communal records Rosa kept but never filed formally. One phrase stood out. Gifted in perpetuity, in service of the thread. It was so like her, refusing paper but trusting people. I looked across the table. Carmen had tucked one leg under her, needle moving in tiny, practiced flicks. Her hair kept falling forward and she kept blowing it out of her eyes. I had once loved that about her, that stubborn, breathless focus. I still did. The parade morning came dressed in marigolds and sky the color of boiled maize. The city had woken early to paint its face, but I felt the time slipping. Less than a day now until the hearing. Less than a few hours until Tomasa would be on that float. If she didn't speak, we had only the banner. We found her in a back alley off the Zocalo, wrapped in a rebozo with shades of obsidian and smoke. I didn't think you'd come, she said. I held the banner up so she could see. Tomasa stared. Her hands, twisted by age, reached out and touched the muslin gently, as if it might break. This stitch here, she said, pointing, is wrong. It curves when it should arc, but it's honest. You taught Rosa, I said. Did she give you the land? Tomasa nodded once. She said, give it to the girls. Make a place where no one asked permission to create. That was her deed, her voice, but not written. She said the cloth was witness enough. I swallowed. If you told the court, I won't. She looked at me, dry eyes gleaming. But the cloth will. One is stronger than the other. The float was a flatbed truck, dressed in sugar skulls and embroidered lace. Carmen and I climbed aboard with our banner rolled under my arm. Tomasa stood beside us, silent, regal, a cane in one hand and a basket of woven bracelets in the other. Someone took our picture from the crowd. I heard a child whisper, "They let her ride?" The parade began. Drums, flutes, the hiss of firecrackers, petals raining from balconies like blessings. I felt my body move with the rhythm, but my mind kept flashing forward, to the courtroom, to the faceless officials who'd asked for notarized documents while we offered thread and testimony. Halfway through the plaza route, Carmen leaned close. "You know, I hated you," she said, barely audible above the music. "I know. But I never stopped checking your name in headlines." I looked at her. I stopped checking everything. The float rounded the last bend. Ahead, the cathedral square bloomed with light and people. Time slippage hit me hard. How had it gone so fast? It had been 4 days, but it felt like only one. "Lucia," Carmen said, taking my hand. "We're here." I unfurled the banner. It caught the breeze like a kite held down by memory. The crowd quieted. Even the band lost its rhythm for a second. Names, dates, trademarks, a stitched record of community and love. The masa raised her basket high, and behind her, the other elder weavers did too. The square became a tapestry of hands. At night, we sat on the edge of Carmen's rooftop again, watching candles flicker between altars across the city. "They'll offer you a deal tomorrow," she said. "I know. And you'll want to take it." I didn't answer right away. Finally, "I want what's right, even if it doesn't protect me." Carmen rested her head on my shoulder. "Then maybe you did come back for more than property." Her hand found mine again. And this time, I didn't let go. Morning came on silent feet. The city was still asleep. Petals stuck to cobblestones, candles half melted in bottles. Only the vendors were up, sweeping storefronts and reheating tamales. Carmen poured us both bitter coffee with cinnamon and left a marigold on the mug I was using. Neither of us said what we knew, that everything would come to a head in a government office that did not care how cloth could carry truth. The hearing was set for 9 a.m. at the Ministry Annex, a concrete building with no windows, only fans buzzing overhead, and chairs too small for dignity. The municipal official, a man in his 50s with a tight voice and tighter jaw, offered me a coffee I didn't take. "We understand your claim, licenciada," he said. "But without legal title, oral accounts carry minimal weight." "I have physical documentation," I said, laying out the huipo, the co-op accession record, and the stitched initials with the 1998 date. "This garment is misattributed in your archive." He skimmed it, unconvinced. "It's still not a deed." Carmen, sitting beside me in a black skirt and blue blouse embroidered with morning birds, unrolled our banner. The room shifted. She didn't say a word, just held it up. Her fingers trembled a little, but her chin did not. The communal cloth, names from over 2 decades of workshop girls, dates, markers, Rosa's stitch, Tomasa's mark. Even the thread used, a dusty rose color Rosa spun herself, kept in an old glass jar now sitting quietly between us on the table. The official hesitated. His assistant leaned in and whispered something. He frowned. Then he reached beneath the stack of files and pulled out an envelope. A formal letter, cream-colored, stamped. "He has one last item to review. It appears to be a transfer acknowledgement signed by your aunt, acquired late last night from an anonymous contributor." He slid it across the table. Carmen went still. The red herring. I picked it up. My own breath caught. Same tone, same date as the one we'd found in the sewing box, but this version had been edited. The recipient line had been changed, now addressed to the Collective Management Board. And the final phrase had been altered to, "May the land serve you." A fake. But I had the original. I pulled it from my bag and set them side by side. This is the real letter. The fake omits context. Rosa wasn't referring to land at all. She was completing a fabric order. You can confirm it. This number, I pointed, matches the delivery ledger from the co-op. He looked again. The signatures were identical, but the fake had smooth ink flow, digitally replicated. I kept my voice steady. The edited version is an attempt to create a backdated land transfer. It doesn't hold. Carmen leaned forward. And it proves something else. Her unpaid labor. They tried to erase that too. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the official slowly tapped his pen against the desk. Your evidence will be submitted for committee review. But, I asked. He looked at both of us. Off the record, they'll offer a private settlement. Recognize some portion of the claim if you drop the cloth from the record. Quiet things down. There it was. I looked at Carmen. She didn't speak. I turned back to the official. Then I reject the offer. Outside, the sun was already high, heat rising off the stone like steam. People had gathered near the church steps, those who'd heard what happened, those who'd been on floats, those who still wore face paint from last night. Tomasa was there, leaning on her cane. She raised 2 fingers, and the others followed suit. A silent signal. Recognition. Carmen stepped forward, raised our banner again, and this time I stepped with her. Not beside, not behind, with. We passed the cloth to a city archivist that afternoon, on record, under our names. It would be cataloged not as legal proof, but cultural testimony. It would take years for the land registry to change, but the story would be there. Signed, seen. That evening, we didn't go home. We stayed at the workshop stringing up new fabric across the rafters. Carmen added a stool beside her loom. Mine. Painted my name on it with gold. She handed me a bobbin, kissed my shoulder. She said, "Your stitches will be crooked." I said, "Yours used to be too." I sat, threaded the needle, pulled the fabric taut. And for once, I didn't think about what might come next.